So, Dr. Jenny, here we go.
All right, everybody. How was that? Wow, yeah. Joshua Nichols, come on up. Y'all, thank you so much for coming to this very, very important meeting today. The Attorney General's office is extremely important, and I am very thrilled that we are going to be having someone that is going to be stepping up to run, as well as the insurance commissioner's position. I can't wait to hear what he's going to say. In the meantime, Joshua Nichols, our dear friend, happened to fight for us, for our freedom to be able to vote. And I would like to introduce him to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Josh.
She ambushed me on that one. I want y'all to No, I don't need the microphone for that. Just do it. Do it. Go ahead, Tony. Go. I'm with you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen. All right. I'm not used to Mr. Microphone here, but I'll try to knock this out. I want to give a bunch of thanks to people, honestly. Jenny's kind of like the person that keeps me in the right road from when we're doing all these political dinners. I'm not an educated man. Those are the people that know me around here know I'm a military man.
There we go.
Army. Yeah. Once they found out I could read and write, they wouldn't let me in the Marine Corps. Just craziest thing, you know. And yeah, both my parents were married, exactly. But no, it's kind of a funny thing because people always say, my wife back there, we always laugh because everybody goes, "Oh, thank you for your service, thank you." And I do appreciate it, and I'm very proud of it, but we were so broke and poor that it was all I could do was just go in the Army. But I very much enjoyed it. I was third generation paratrooper, which was something. My grandfather was a retired command sergeant major at Fort Stewart. My father was a captain in 101st, so it was kind of like a passage for me to just put on those airborne wings and do what I did. And I was lucky enough to be with Ranger units and special operation units my whole time. I lucked out, basically. But what I will say about that, and I wasn't going to get into that spiel, but since we were talking about the veteran thing, is I learned so much from the military. And my wife back here in the pink dress, she will tell you that I have these mannerisms that still drive her nuts. And those of y'all, how many do we have veterans in here? It changes your life forever, doesn't it?
For the better.
And you by default have OCD. I mean, and I still live by those mantras of hard right, easy wrong. Do that, do this, do this. One of the things Jenny and I always cut up and fuss about is I am not in any affiliation as voting goes. I think one of the cool things that I learned in the military is by taking that oath to your country, one of the things you swear to protect and defend is the Constitution. And your right to vote. And I don't belittle anybody, I don't badger anybody. I want you to just vote. I don't care who you vote for. I don't feel like you have to be in any group or clique or anything like that. And I've got buddies around here like Will, and we just always laugh about we're going to support whoever we want to support. We don't get into these cliques. But one of the reasons I decided to host this event is those of you guys that were in the military always know is one of the things you had to learn in the infantry units and combat arms was the maximum effective range of every piece of equipment you had. Y'all remember that? You veterans? You remember I still remember that an M16's maximum effective range is 550 meters. That was 30 years ago. Well, I had a platoon sergeant told me one time, he said, "Son, I'm going to tell you something." He said, "One thing I can tell you is equipment gets better and it gets worse, or we change equipment. Those maximum effective ranges will change. But one maximum effective range that doesn't change is excuses. The maximum effective range of an excuse is 0 meters. All I'm getting out of the current slate of politicians is excuses for why we didn't defend what is our right. here to vote, to make a difference. And I can't tell you what happened in this last election. I can sit there and talk to the politicians, but nobody can give me a definitive answer of what happened and why we didn't protect it. It was an excuse. I'm not signing off for that. Just me and everybody that I saw around this world that fought with me, I'm not signing off on that. I'm going to do my best to try to put people in place that can be held accountable. That's why I agreed to do this fundraiser today. I want people in place that will protect those things, that can give me a reason and then tell me how to solve the problems that are out there. That's what I think. That's just me. That's just what I believe in. So without going any further, I just want to thank a few people. I want to thank Jenny at first, because Jenny and y'all know Jenny. I can fight with Jenny and I can talk with Jenny. Either way, and we'll talk 3 days later and we're fine. It's just because she's as passionate as I am about some of the stuff I believe in. So I want to thank her. I want to thank William. I want to thank Will. They are the ones that agreed to host this with us and just say, hey, we're in this. Even if we don't support all the same candidates, we all feel the same way. We fight for that what we think is right, what we're convicted to fight for. So I wanted to thank them. I want to thank Chef. Did Chef leave? I can't tell you, and probably there's probably not any kids here, but I don't want to say what Chef says every time we want to host one of these on a Saturday or Sunday. I'll spare you that because there's some church going on here. But Chef tolerates it, and he steps up. The staff back there, Dalton, these guys back here, Isaiah, Trevor, Spence, Dalton, they're like our adopted children. Have y'all ever had a restaurant? You would know that they're basically like your adopted children. You scream at them, you yell at them, but you love them just the same. And they're the ones that agree to come out here and help do this. And y'all know how it is. Y'all know how it is. You do these things, you put out the food, it looks like the assault on Normandy as soon as the food comes out. So they are the ones that make it happen and tolerate everything. And last and not least is Jess. Yep. What I tell everybody is my supervisor. I tell everybody goes, oh, you got all the stuff there and you don't have to answer anybody. That's a bunch of crap. You answer to that person right there. So if I forgot anybody, Tony, I appreciate Tony. I appreciate everybody here. I will turn it over to you, Jenny. Y'all can move here or move from here. If y'all need anything, let one of the guys in the black shirts know what you need. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. And so our guest speakers, who we are so thrilled to have, know what we are. We, the people of Southeast Georgia, we are not affiliated with a particular political organization. We are American citizens who, number one, believe the United States Constitution as written. We believe in the America First agenda. And we believe in voting integrity, transparency, and put people in jail if they are corrupt. And four, we believe in we've got to get rid of Brandon. Now, I'm going to introduce Patrick because I'm just excited. And then someone who is a real good friend of John, and we know William Ligon, who is a part of the investigative process after the 2020 election mess went down. Yes, he will introduce John. But Patrick, come on over here. Look at this young man, y'all. Aren't we thrilled that someone is stepping up to run for this important insurance commissioner position? Thank you so much, Patrick. He is a Yale graduate, and he was a quarterback on the football team, so he can stand up to anybody under pressure. Patrick.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jenny.
And thank you to all of you for showing up on a Saturday. We got a gorgeous day. I think, I was talking to Senator Ligon just a moment ago. This definitely takes the cake for best venue for a GOP event that I've ever been to. We'll need to talk to some of the other counties, see if we can improve where they're meeting. But my name is Patrick Witt. I'm running to be your next insurance commissioner. I'm grateful to be endorsed by the 45th, and if we're lucky, the 47th president, my former boss, Donald J. Trump. A lot of folks don't know what the insurance commissioner does. I don't blame you for that. And maybe fewer of you or more of you know who I am. So I want my background and why it's so critical that we get the right person in this office. The insurance commissioner's office is not one of those races that gets a lot of the headlines, but it's an incredibly important position. And even more so than any congressman or senator you can send to Washington, this position has the potential to affect your life day to day almost immediately upon assuming the office. So again, my name is Patrick Witt. I grew up here in Georgia, second generation Georgian in the Atlanta area. I was a quarterback at Parkview High School. My older brother was a quarterback as well. My team is probably getting tired of hearing this, but anytime I come to South Georgia, I always have an issue with one of the counties because unfortunately, South Georgia got the better of us a number of times when I was in high school. So my sophomore year, we played against Camden County and unfortunately lost on a muffed punt. So that, you came in second. Do you know that game? Okay, all right. Yeah, we were in Valdosta earlier today, and it's funny. We lost to Camden in the first game of the year. We won every game in between, and then we went to the state championship and lost to Lowndes. So I'm just going to all the places that we got beat, unfortunately. But so my story was intimately tied up with football, and I had a chance to go play in college for several years, and then played briefly in the NFL with the New Orleans Saints. And after football ended, I went to work in the private sector and then back to law school. And I was at one of the most liberal law schools in the country, the same place that Ketanji Brown Jackson apparently forgot what a woman is, that kind of place. And Donald Trump got elected when I was in law school. And so watching my classmates melt down in front of my eyes was one of the most enjoyable experiences of my life. I kid you not, they brought puppies to campus. They offered to postpone or cancel finals. They had therapy sessions, you name it. And, I tell folks this, I wasn't alive at the time, but I would imagine it was similar to how people felt the day after JFK got assassinated. That's the kind of devastation that these people were experiencing. And what you realized back then is that, I was going to school with the sons and daughters of that liberal elite that exists to ensure that things like Donald Trump don't happen. That ensure that the people of America don't wrest back power from these elites and take it back in their own hands. And I watched, I graduated, I went to work in the private sector, but I watched as that machine that was surprised by Trump's victory in 2016 went into overdrive to kneecap the America First agenda, to thwart the administration, and to ultimately ensure that President Trump did not win re-election. And like a lot of you, I was consuming headlines, watching the news, Russia collusion hoax, special prosecutors, deep state bureaucrats leaking to the press and outright thwarting the America First agenda. And I was frustrated, and I was angry, and I was, confronted with the decision. I can be frustrated on the sidelines, or I can go get involved. And so I had an opportunity to go serve in the Trump administration, and I went in and I was deputy chief and then chief of staff of the Office of Personnel Management. And similar to the insurance commissioner's office, it's one of these agencies you've probably never heard of, but has tremendous power behind the scenes. The easiest way to understand my responsibilities in the Trump administration was that when Trump would get up there and talk about draining the swamp, I was actually implementing the executive orders and the policies to try and do exactly that. A lot of folks don't know this. When they elect a president, they think, things are going to change. We're going to dramatically turn course. When you elect a president, you affect 3,000 to 4,000 jobs in the executive branch. Might sound like a lot until you realize that the denominator is 2.2 million federal workers. So when you elect a president, the only person you get to actually choose in the executive branch, you affect less than 1% of the federal government. Is it any surprise that a lot of these bureaucrats view themselves as the government, and you're basically just a tourist passing through watching them operate the government. That's how they treat you as a political appointee. My boss in the administration had a funny way to describe it. He said, they're the B team. They'll be here before we get there, and they'll be there after we leave. And that's pretty much how they treat you in the administration. So we were passing the policies to try and wrest back power from these bureaucrats and give it to the only person in the executive branch who represents the people, and that's the president. One of my other jobs in the administration was implementing the executive order that President Trump passed to eliminate critical race theory from the federal government. And we were tasked with gathering up all of the materials that these different agencies were teaching people. And we had stacks of paper on unconscious bias training and all of these other liberal academic buzzwords. And as you well know, basically shorthand is if you're white, you're racist, and if you're a male, you're an oppressor, and that you're a terrible person. That's what we were teaching people in our federal government. It's not just in schools, it's in the federal government as well, and it's pretty much everywhere. And it's seeping into boardrooms all over the country as well. It is pernicious and ultimately incredibly destructive, and we have to fight it wherever we find it. I'll give you one example. The State Department was probably the most outrageous that I saw. They had almost 1,000 pages of training on unconscious bias and systemic oppression and all these other buzzwords. And what they were doing is they were teaching all of these foreign service officers coming into our government, and they're teaching them that America is a fundamentally racist country, irredeemably racist, has all these issues, that we're oppressors, we commit human rights abuses the world over. And then we send these people out to advocate for American interests. Is it any surprise that we get taken advantage of in every single trade deal and every bilateral negotiation with other countries? When the people that we send to advocate for us, we tell them what a terrible place America is before sending them off? It's outrageous. One of my other responsibilities in the administration at OPM was we handled all of the federal employee benefits programs. So I personally negotiated health insurance, dental insurance, vision insurance on behalf of 2.2 million federal workers, retirees, and their families, about 9 million Americans in total. And with the art of the deal president in the White House, hopefully it should come as no surprise that we achieved great results. And we got the lowest premiums in the past 30 years in that program. And then November 3rd happened. I had come home to vote in person in Georgia and went back up to DC, and like a lot of you, woke up the day after and didn't know what happened. We were in a complete fog up there in DC. When you're on the administration side, you're not aware of what's going on the campaign side. And suddenly Georgia's not called yet. What? Georgia wasn't even supposed to be in play. And so as a political appointee, your job terminates if the president doesn't win re-election. You're on the same timeline as he is. And so I went to the director of my agency and I said, Mike, I think I'm going to be most helpful to the administration if I take an unpaid leave of absence and I just go back home and I volunteer and see what I can do to help get to the bottom of what happened in that election. And again, when you're on the administration side, you don't have contact with the campaign side, but I remember, like a lot of you do, that President Trump was up there on the stump for about a year leading up to that election, describing exactly what the Democrats were going to try and do to steal that election and ensure that he did not get reelected. And when I got to Trump HQ in Buckhead, I saw a scene of complete chaos and total lack of structure and preparation for this. And I don't know whether they were outright lying to the president, saying, yeah, we're taking care of this, or whether they were genuinely caught off guard. But there was no plan in place. But the worst part of it was, I'm sitting in there, Don Jr. had come down, Kimberly Guilfoyle, a number of others, and Don Jr. is talking with some of the lawyers in the room, and he says, okay, what's the plan? And they're assuring Don Jr. that, yes, we're going to fight for President Trump, we're going to fight for election integrity, we're going to launch lawsuits, we've got a plan in place. And then when Don Jr. leaves and the news cameras go away, I'm still in the room, behind closed doors with some of the most recognizable figures of our Georgia political establishment, listening to how they were going to fundraise off of election integrity. I got the text messages, I got the emails just like you, and how they were going to take all that money and basically redirect it to the Senate runoffs and not do a thing about election integrity and not do a thing to actually fight that recount. And I was disgusted by it. They were deceiving and defrauding certainly Georgians and people all over the country who were sending in money, and they were told that it was going to go towards a certain purpose, but they had no intention of actually putting it towards that purpose. You know, my first experience, thank God I grew up in a Christian conservative home. I voted Republican my entire life, but I was not familiar with state party politics. My first public service was going to work in the Trump administration in DC. But I thought I lived in a red state with a bunch of fire-breathing, strong conservatives who were fighting for me and representing me. And what I found was the exact opposite. When you're in DC, you know exactly what Democrats are up to, you know what you're dealing with. And you think that rhinos are a uniquely DC phenomenon. And to see that same kind of inaction and cowardice from many of our state leaders was completely disgusting to me. And, you know, thank goodness, present company excluded, Senator Ligon, you have been a complete warrior on this issue. That's not to say there were a select few, but unfortunately it was the exception to the rule. The rule was that most of those folks had no interest in fighting that fight and getting to the bottom of what happened. And so I was faced with a similar decision to when I left my job in the private sector to go serve in the Trump administration. And I said, you know, I can be frustrated by the people leading my state, or I can step up and I can get involved. And so given my experience managing a federal agency, dealing with insurance companies head to head, this was a natural fit, and I'm grateful to have President Trump's support when he asked me if I would run for this office. So I want to make you 3 promises as your next insurance commissioner, and I'll kind of touch on some of these in the context of why it's so important to get the right person in that job. Number 1, I'm going to fight to keep your cost as low as humanly possible. Second, I'm going to fight to make sure that insurance in Georgia never goes woke. And I'll explain what I mean by that a little bit more in a minute. And third, I'm going to fight for Georgia families, and I'm going to make sure that insurance companies stay honest. So number 1, fighting to keep costs as low as humanly possible in this crazy inflation environment that we're living in. Every dollar that I can keep in your pocket matters right now. I mean, shoot, driving down here from Atlanta cost me twice what it would, you know, last year, and certainly when President Trump was in office. People are suffering right now, and one of the biggest costs for folks is insurance. And every rate increase, you know, that insurance companies try and file here in Georgia has to be approved by the insurance commissioner. So that's what I mean when I say you can send folks off to Washington and Congress or the Senate, but I have the power to actually affect, you know, everyone's pocketbooks right away on day 1 by taking a hard look at all of the rate increases that have happened under our current insurance commissioner and either giving a thumbs up or thumbs down to those. A lot of folks don't know this. Georgia has one of the highest premium taxes in the entire country. And most folks don't even know what a premium tax is. It's one of these hidden taxes. You don't see it on the paycheck that you get from work. It is levied against the insurance companies after they collect all the premiums. And so you don't see it, but we as conservatives know that taxes are rarely, if ever, 100% borne. You know, the burden is borne by the people they're levied against. We pay for it in the form of higher premiums. It's passed on to consumers. I want to work with our state legislature to lower that premium tax. It brings in $1.3 billion into our state's coffers every year, and the insurance commissioner's office is funded out of that $1.3 billion. But does anyone want to take a guess as to how much the insurance commissioner's budget is every year? $30 million, a lot less. So what does that remaining $1.27 billion go to? I don't know, but my suspicion is that it's effectively a slush fund for a lot of other pet projects. But I want to work to lower that premium tax. And one of the other things, you know, according to the FBI, and I know I have plenty of issues with the FBI, but their statistics database shows that Georgia is the 2nd worst state in the entire country for insurance fraud. We're only slightly ahead of Florida, so I guess that's one thing we're doing better than Florida these days, so, you know, good for us. But I want to work to try and eliminate as much fraud as we can from that system, because as we know with insurance, how do you pay for insurance? You spread the cost around. So when there's fraud in the system, we bear the brunt of that in the form of higher cost. Second thing, and this is probably the biggest difference between me and the current insurance commissioner, I'm going to fight to keep insurance in Georgia from ever going woke. And what I mean by that, how many folks in this room know what HB 1013 is? Yep. Good. All right. Number of hands. You never know. You go to some counties and no one raises their hand, and then other counties, every hand shoots up. HB 1013 was the mental health bill, and it basically said that it mandated all insurance companies to cover treatment and services, all treatment and services for anything classified as a mental health disorder. And I'm not against helping people. I think that we do have mental health, issues, a crisis in this country, and I want to help folks. But the issue with that bill, and there were many, was that who gets to define what a mental health disorder is? In that bill, as originally drafted, it gave that authority, that definition, over to the World Health Organization. Does anyone see any issues with that? So according to the World Health Organization, gender dysphoria, for example, is a mental health disorder. So what's a treatment or a service for that? Well, maybe gender reassignment surgery or puberty blockers for your kids. So under that bill, if they're mandated to cover all treatment and services for anything classified as a mental health disorder, you and I would have been on the hook for paying for that. We're subsidizing these procedures. And this was not Democrats pushing this bill, although Stacey Abrams and every single Democrat in the State House and State Senate supported it. This was pushed forward by Speaker Ralston, Republicans, and the current insurance commissioner. The current insurance commissioner threatened insurance companies and said, if you want to keep operating in the state of Georgia, you better, quote, get on board with this legislation. Now, one of two things is true. Either he didn't know what was in the bill and he was completely ignorant, or he knew exactly what was in the bill and maybe he's a little bit woke himself. Yep. Either one of those is a fireable offense, in my opinion. That bill also contained a backdoor red flag law provision for Second Amendment advocates in here. It lowered the standard for involuntary commitment. You don't think that could be potentially abused? You have a liberal neighbor down the street that doesn't like your politics, and they say, you know what, Bill down the road, a little bit unhinged, a little bit, out of control. Maybe we should go get him involuntarily committed, and then guess what? You're deprived of your Second Amendment rights based on that involuntary commitment. Now, I'm happy to report that we raised a lot of hell about that legislation. A lot of folks in this room joined us, and we got Senator Liggett and others in the state Senate to remove as many of those objectionable clauses as possible. So that was a major win for grassroots. And the last thing I'll say on keeping insurance from going woke, your personal decision of whether or not to get a vaccine should never be the grounds for whether or not you get life-saving care or health care of any kind. I will never allow insurance companies to. So the final promise I'll make to you, and I promise to wrap up because I definitely want to pass it over to this man over here who will continue to talk about the issues in that 2020 election, and we need him to get elected so badly. The last one, I want to keep insurance companies honest. When you sign up for an insurance policy, you are making a contract with the insurance company, and that insurance company is making a contract with you. And every month when you pay your premiums, you honor that contract. And when you have to file a claim and an insurance company is giving you the runaround and not treating you fairly, they are betraying the trust and not honoring the contract. They are breaking that contract with you. And God forbid if you have a loved one that gets that diagnosis, or you yourself have to get a procedure, an operation done, or a tree falls on your home in the middle of the night, or your other property gets destroyed in a natural disaster, and that insurance company is not treating you fairly, I want you to call my office. We are going to beef up the Consumer Services Division in the Department of Insurance. We're going to staff it 24/7 with a live human being you can talk to, not a robot. You're not going to have to click 7 buttons. You're going to be able to talk to someone who's knowledgeable about your policy and get your questions answered. Because a lot of times there's deceptive, bad faith practices in the insurance business. A lot of times they have an internal policy that says if you file a claim, we just blanket denial. We just send you back a letter that says, nope, that's not covered, sorry. And unfortunately, they have stats inside those insurance companies that show that 20 to 30% of folks, probably even higher, won't fight that. They'll just assume that the insurance company has looked at this in good faith and made a determination that it's outside the scope of their policy. Those kinds of bad faith business practices need to be put to an end, because again, you honor that contract every month. And in your moment of need, when the insurance company is not honoring that contract, that's wrong. And we're going to put an end to that when I'm insurance commissioner. Our current insurance commissioner seems like a very nice guy. I've never met him personally, but one of the interesting things I'll leave you with is I didn't know this prior to announcing for this office, but after I announced my candidacy, I got call after call and text after text from people inside the insurance commissioner's office that said, "We're so grateful that you're running." Because my boss, the current insurance commissioner, this person was telling me, he never shows up to work. He's there 2-3 times a month for a ribbon cutting ceremony or a photo op, but this is not his primary focus. And I respect his service. He's in the Georgia National Guard. My brother serves in the Alabama Air National Guard. He's a fighter pilot. But when he signed up for this job and Governor Kemp appointed him, he took an oath that said that he was going to execute the duties of this office. And he's not doing that right now. It's not his primary focus, and that's fine. But you should not be telling people that you're going to do a job that you're obviously not interested in doing. So again, my name is Patrick Witt. I'm proud to be endorsed by President Trump for this position. I'm asking for your vote on May 24th. I want to fight for you and your family. I want to be accessible, and I want to make sure that our Department of Insurance is living up to the mandate that it has under our state constitution. So thank you so much for being here.
When you got to Atlanta, who was responsible for the betrayal of Trump?
Good question.
The party or Brian Kemp and the administration?
Good question.
What was the first part of the?
When you got to Atlanta and you saw the betrayal, who was responsible? The party in Schaefer or the administration in Kemp?
Yeah. So David Schaefer has been great on this issue, actually. And, one of the interesting things that it was confusing to me at first, because I remember asking the question to numerous people. I said, who's in charge? And no one could quite tell me. Because presidential campaigns, I learned, are unique, where you have the candidate, in this case Trump, they have their campaign. You have the RNC, which has their own apparatus, and then you have the state GOP. So you have 3 entities that come together in each state, and oftentimes it's not clear where one ends and the other begins. And actually some of the people collect checks from 2 separate entities. If I had to lay the blame at anyone's feet, it would be the RNC, because they were the ones calling the shots after November 3rd, and they gave clear directives to their own people to completely jettison Trump, throw him overboard, and focus everything on the Senate runoffs. So those were the people that I could tell. I would sit down, I would have a conversation with them, and they would kind of just nod like this. And I knew that they were hearing from a different voice, their actual boss, telling them, just, kind of deal with these people, say whatever you need to say to get them to go away. And then they turn right back to focusing all of their efforts on the Senate runoffs.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I know William Ligon was in charge of the legislative task force. I'm going to say something about you because he was. No, you can come on up here because he was livid, and we had so many late night conversations about this. And then I was pulled in on the task force with him. But y'all, William has been fighting for us since this happened, and thank you, William. And now, please introduce her.
Thank you, Jenny. Well, thank you all for coming out to listen to a couple of great candidates. I tell you, it is an honor for me to make the next introduction, because we really have a chance now to elect an attorney general that will do the things that we know need to be done in this state. And that's why I want to do all that I can to help John Gordon become our next attorney general. John's from Macon. He grew up there. He graduated from Mercer Law School. He worked at the district attorney's office there. He's been in private practice. He's been a successful businessman. He's been married to his wife for 43 years. They have 3 sons. And all of that is great. That's a great foundation for him. But the reason I'm supporting him is that he understands what's going on in this country. And he sees the damage that's being done. And he knows that we have leaders in office that don't have the courage to do what needs to be done to protect our liberties, our freedoms, our constitutional rights. And so I want to do everything that I can to help him get elected. And I encourage you to do the same. And after you hear him speak, I know that you're going to agree and you're going to support him with enthusiasm as well. So let's welcome John Witt.
That's about as nice of an endorsement as you could ever get. I have so much admiration for this gentleman, and he has a lot to do with the fact that I decided to run for Attorney General. I'll talk about that some more in a minute, but I'm John Gordon. I'm a candidate for Attorney General. And really just what Josh said. Okay, thank you very much. I do like Coastal Kitchen, by the way. I'm glad, it's a pleasure to get to finally meet you. My wife and I come here all the time. Speaking of which, I came here at 14 for the first time and fell in love with this place. It has been such a special place for me and my family, first with my mom and dad, and then later I came and I worked for the Cloister. I met my future wife there on the tennis court. I was working, she was vacationing. I'm still working, she's still vacationing. But I'm the luckiest man alive. That was 48 years ago, and then it took me a little while to convince her. She got out of that big car with a great big old smile when I was organizing the tennis tournament over at the Cloister, and I thought to myself, I'm going to marry that girl. But it took a little while for her to come around to that realization. But we have had a great life together. We've raised 3 wonderful sons. We've worked hard to raise 3 good sons. And I've worked hard since I was 12 years old. My dad grew up on a farm in Ohio. My mom was from Georgia, so she convinced him to sell his business and move us all down here. It worked out great in the long run. But his dad taught him to do the chores. So my dad taught me to do the chores. And I'm really grateful to him for having instilled that work ethic in me as just a little boy. But I started my first business at 12 years old. I sold soft drinks to the workmen that were building houses around our neighborhood. And I was a very successful business person at 12 years old. And I learned to love the sense of accomplishment that comes from hard work. And so that's what I've done. And I worked hard to as a lawyer, and then I worked hard to build 2 businesses. My wife and I have worked hard giving back to our community. I was the chairman of Skyland Trail, which is one of the country's foremost treatment facilities for mental illness. We treat people with mood disorders, schizophrenia, bipolar, depression, and we publish our outcomes. And the results that we get from our clients is phenomenal. They come in despair and they leave with optimism. They're able to live independently and to get jobs and to live meaningful lives. So I take a great deal of satisfaction in having volunteered there for 25 years and them recognizing me as their chairman the last 3 years of service. 16 years ago, I watched in horror as news flashes came across the television that Atlanta police officers had been shot in a no-knock warrant in Atlanta. And I believe in the Constitution, and I believe in the Bill of Rights, and I believe in that lady with blindfolds on holding the scales of justice. And as we watched the events unfold, I turned to my wife and I said, something does not sound right here. And so I'll give you just to go right to the point that Atlanta police, shoddy police work, entered the home, the sanctuary of a 92-year-old grandmother, and she lived in fear of being broken into, so she reached for her rusted out pistol. She managed to fire 1 shot. It went into the ceiling. They pumped her full of 32 rounds of ammunition. They killed her. She was suspected of nothing. She was guilty of nothing. Then they went downstairs and planted marijuana in the basement, tried to say that the grandson had been dealing drugs out of the house. That story lasted about 2 minutes because he turned out to be a straight A student and a Boy Scout. And so they had a guy that they put in the back of the police car and said, this is what you're going to say. And he felt like he was being framed. And so he somehow got out of the back of the police car, went to a phone, called 911, said, come and put me in protective custody. I've got a story to tell. They did. The whole story came unraveled. So I reached out to the pastor of the church there and I said, look, just because you don't hear from other people in Atlanta doesn't mean that we're not grieving with you and frustrated and upset with you. This was Ferguson before Ferguson, by the way. And so I was hanging up the phone. He said, well, thank you very much. It really means a lot to me. And I'm hanging up the phone. He said, hey, do you want to meet for coffee? I said, yes, I want to meet for coffee. So we met the next morning at the Silver Skillet in downtown Atlanta and had a great breakfast. We became fast friends. And at the end of the breakfast, he said, well, you want to ride over and see Ms. Johnston's house with me? And I said, sure, I'll go see Ms. Johnston's house. And as we made the trip through the neighborhood, I've never been more in shock. Little children were playing on dirt lots next to drug dealers and prostitutes. Trash was littering the streets, and piles of debris were in vacant yards where contractors just came and dumped their refuse in the neighborhood refuse. And as I learned more, I learned that this is the worst zip code in America. Worse for HIV per capita of any zip code, worse for crime, worse for violent crime, worse for obesity, diabetes, illiteracy, homelessness, joblessness, every social ill you can imagine. And I really do believe in God. And as we were leaving, I said, Anthony, maybe we can make some lemonade out of these lemons. And he said, well, what do you mean, John? And I said, why don't we start a charity and we'll name it the Friends of English Avenue, and I'll go out and hit up all my friends and we'll raise some money and we'll try and revitalize this neighborhood. Well, the first thing we did is we moved a cop into the neighborhood. It changed the whole dynamic with the neighbors and the Atlanta police. I think we role modeled how you can get it right. We have spent $2 million there. Now Arthur Blank and the Falcons, Dan Cathy and the Chick-fil-A, Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers and Big Sisters, YMCA, they've all come there to help revitalize this neighborhood. It was a great petri dish, and we showed what is possible. So I take great pride in that. And now, ladies and gentlemen, after having been retired for 3 years, semi-retired, except for one significant area, I want to work hard for you. And I want to work hard for the people of Georgia. Because for the last year and some change, I have worked with Bob Shealy, who brought the case in Georgia, Jeffords versus the Fulton Board of Elections. Like Patrick, I wasn't there when Patrick was. I wish I had been. I wanted to be. But I was looking for a place where I could insert myself. And so I called up Bob Shealy, who was introduced to me by a mutual friend. And I said, Bob, I'd like to come and work for free on this lawsuit. He said, come on down. And boy, have I seen a lot. And I'm here to tell you that I have seen the evidence. I've talked to the witnesses. I've looked at the images on the Secretary of State's website. I've watched the videotapes. I have talked to the eyewitnesses who each independently, without collaboration, with 40 years of combined experience as poll workers, testified under oath that they saw a pallet full of pristine ballots at the State Farm tabulating center that had not been touched by the human hand, were unfolded, all scored identically, and seemingly filled out by a printer rather than a human hand. I am so sick and tired of the mainstream media brainwashing the people of this country, saying no evidence of fraud. The big lie is the biggest lie. And that's why I told my wife, there are 3 million people in America when the Declaration of Independence was signed, and 30 people signed it. I said, darling, this is our time, this is our moment. I want to be the 30 people of our generation, because I am not going to stand here and watch the greatest country on earth being snatched out from underneath us, under our very eyes. And then our constitutional officers telling us that what we have seen with our eyes and our good brains is not true. So I have worked hard. I have worked hard on this lawsuit, which is more than I can say about my opponent, Chris Do-Nothing Carr. Has anybody seen him? No. Have you seen him, Patrick? I haven't seen him, and I've been all over Georgia. We've spent 2 weeks in North Georgia. My gosh, I went to Homer, Georgia. Anybody seen Homer, Georgia? Yeah. Oh, God. Not. But I have now, and it's a lovely place. But I haven't seen him anywhere. I think he's living in Joe Biden's basement. But he sold us out, ladies and gentlemen. He's the one who drafted the consent decree. He's the one with one-term Brad who invented drop boxes paid for by Zuckerberg. Do you realize that Mark Zuckerberg spent $40 million just in the state of Georgia?
Yes.
$450 million in the United States, the biggest amount, largest amount ever spent in a presidential election by a single individual. Rig 2020. Rig2020.com. You can download it, $5. You can 43 minutes. Watch the film. Don't do it before dinner because unless you want to go on a diet, because it'll ruin your appetite and it'll make you upset. But it lays it all out. It's all right there. And so I looked, and Judge Brian Amaro, by the way, thought we had a good judge. He ruled that we had made out a prima facie case for fraud. In a written order, he ruled that. And he ordered the absentee ballots unsealed. Have you read that? Some of you have, but have you heard it in the mainstream media?
No.
No. And so it's an insult. Stevie Wonder could see the fraud in the 2020 elections. So I said to my wife, I said, look, we can't get justice in the courts. The mainstream media is covering up the truth. And our constitutional officers have failed us miserably. I am not going to sit here on the beach where I want to be when I feel like our country is at risk for my children and our grandchildren. And so I'm prepared to go to work for you. And when you elect me Attorney General, the very first thing I will do is open an investigation into the 2020 election. We will find the facts, we will expose the fraud, and we will hold the people that did this accountable. Now, I'm also going to protect our communities. I watched in utter horror as I saw people in my town marching down Peachtree Street, looting, burning, destroying property, smashing storefronts and stealing Prada, Gucci, and Hermes scarves and shoes. And has anyone been prosecuted? No. Fonnie Willis is so busy prosecuting President Trump for a phone call that she doesn't have time to protect the citizens of Atlanta who elected her to that office. So and they're on video. We know who they are. We can find them. As Attorney General, I'm going to round them up and I'm going to prosecute them. When the local prosecutor doesn't do their job, I will do it for them. I'm going to convene a convention of every law enforcement agency in Georgia. We are going to meet in a location. We're going to sit there until we write a plan that everybody in the room can agree on that is going to stop the influx of fentanyl into our state. Yeah. If Joe Biden won't protect our borders, I will. I'm also going to protect our children. And like you, I do not like the direction that I see things going in our educational system. And if someone dares teach critical race theory to our children, they will see me in court because I will seek an injunction to make them stop. I will also prosecute as a child abuser anyone who dares counsel a child under 18 without the involvement of the parent and the family doctor on gender identity. Not on my watch. So I am very gratified and humbled to have received the endorsements of Speaker Gingrich, Ambassador Randy Evans, Admiral Charles Kubik, who oversaw building the wall at the southern border, the Veterans for America First, oh yeah, and the 45th and 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. So we've got a website, it's called www.jg4ag.com. You can go there and like us. There's a little red button up in the top right-hand corner. Oh, I'm sorry, I think it says donate actually. That would be a good way to like us. $5, $10, it would go a long ways. And we do have a little tradition that we've started here right after I answer this question.
You bet.
Yes, sir.
John, when you prosecute the local criminal indicted district attorney, Jackie Johnson, you want to protect communities, take care of Jackie Johnson, protect the Brunswick Judicial Circuit. God bless you for all that you said you will do. Jackie Johnson is a name you cannot forget. Chris Carr will be nothing.
I met Jackie Johnson on Wednesday for the first time. I may have forgotten to mention I own a home here, and I've been coming here for since I was 14. That's not 14 years.
What's your deal?
55 years. But I love this part of the country. So I have known of her, and I met her on Wednesday, and I told her, I said, look, don't worry about Chris Carr. After this election, you'll never hear from him again.
Thank goodness.
So it's grandstanding. I can't find anything else he's done. It's a headline, and so anyway, we do have a little tradition at our rallies and when we meet folks that I just ask you to try and remember my name, and our website is JG for AG. And could I get a JG for AG from you folks here today? One more time now, really loud, so the people in the restaurant can hear you. Right on. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll do me a favor, if you would all rise and let's do the national anthem. Face the flag up here. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Now, I think that we can't have enough prayer, and it's freedom of religion, and I would love to invite our dear friend Reba Renee to close us out in prayer. And then, y'all, we have delicious appetizers. Please help yourself to the bar. Appetizers, we do have to be out of here around 5 o'clock. They're setting up for another activity. Reba, close us out here.
Thank you, Jenny. She does a fabulous job, doesn't she? I don't know what to say except thank you, Jesus. He's the one that's put all of us together. He's the only one that we can depend on. And I pray, I don't believe in luck. I believe it's God's will. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this beautiful day. We thank you for bringing all of us together for one purpose, and that's to make sure that we vote for the right person. I thank you, Lord, that they've given up their time to come and speak to us and let us know where their heart is. And from what I've heard today, their heart is with you first, and then it's with the state of Georgia. Continue to bless us, Lord, as we go our different ways. And we give you all the love and glory and praise that we can give. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank Thank you all. These are great candidates. Thank all the rest of the candidates that are here. Thank you for coming. Please meet and greet and let folks know what you stand for. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.